My guest today is more than a singer-songwriter. She's a poet and somewhat of a mystical storyteller. Her voice is sweet yet haunting that fills you with a sense of hope, but only if you dare to dream. Her lyrics are poignant and clever but never pretentious, and her music borders somewhere unknown between folk and ambient sound. She's won awards such as Texas Music Magazine naming her album The Astronaut as one of the best albums of 2022. 2019 Hollywood Songwriting Contest Best Pop Song, You Lit Me. 2020 Corpus Christi Songwriters Festival Best of the Fest Award. And in 2022 ECU Film Festival Performing Artist in Paris, France. And the list goes on and on. Please welcome to Inside Arthead, the artist Jana Pochop. Greetings, everyone, and thanks for joining the Inside Arthead podcast. It's here we'll explore the inspiration, motivation, process, and fulfillment of creating art. I'm your host, Roni Zulu, bringing you inspirational stories from artists around the world. Jana, thanks for being on the show and letting us get inside your art head.
Thanks, Zulu. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm very excited, and I'm going to let our listeners know that we have a little background.
We do.
You first met me and you because you came for a tattoo.
Yeah, came for the first one.
Yeah.
And then just kept coming.
And I've always enjoyed tattooing you. You always get these mystical, wonderful things. But the thing about that first trip is I found out that you were a musician.
That's true.
And not just a musician. You were a singer-songwriter.
Yep.
And here's the funny thing. Of course, when I find out someone's a singer or songwriter, I'm like, well, can I hear it? And I believe you gave me your album, The Astronaut.
It might have been the one before that, like Throats Are Quarries with the big mouth on it.
That was the one.
That was the one.
The one with the what is it? The Hold On to the Handlebars, Don't Hold On to the Handlebars song that I play all the time.
That sounds familiar.
I'll
pull it up.
I'll figure it
there.
out. When your soul leaves your body.
Yes.
That's
you
on
nailed
that
it.
album.
That's the line.
Gosh, I played that song to death. And the
thank
funny
you.
thing about it is the particular genre of music that you do, I wouldn't say never care for it, but I never bought, I
Sure.
never saw it, and it just wasn't my thing. I don't have any of that kind of music in my collection. And when I listened to yours, everything changed.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
All of a sudden, I fell in love with this music that you were making, and
Thank you.
I couldn't figure out, am I listening to folk? Am I listening to ambient, tribal? What the heck is this woman doing? And I'm wondering, have you had that effect on anybody else who wasn't really kind of in, let's say, that singer-songwriter genre that people kind of look for when they're looking for records?
I love that question. Thank you for saying that, number one, because we're in Austin, Texas, which is just full of singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
And we all like come down to a core of like acoustic guitar and voice, or a lot of us in the genre anyway. And I love playing guitar. It's my favorite thing to do. But I have always been, you get a little stuck and maybe personally bored if that's just all it is. So I've always been sort of trying to like seek out what is the sound on top of my sound, and putting those things together. So when you said like ambient and a little, I call it folk pop, but I think now it's like indie folk with ambient electronica elements. There's I just keep piling things on, but hopefully tastefully is my goal. So I hope that people hear that and they're like, well, that's a little different. That's always the goal.
It's
Perk in
definitely
here.
different.
Thank you.
And that's why I dig it.
Good.
And it's so funny that I do. I love it when somebody turns me on to something that I would never have sought out on my own.
I think those are kind of magic moments too, where you like the universe is like, you should hear this. However it gets to you, you're going to hear it.
So when did you start playing guitar and knew that this is what I want to do?
I started playing when I was 11. and like pretty much immediately, like I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is all I want to do all day long. I was the weird kid that like went home to practice. And I remember in like, it was probably like 7th grade or something, we had to do one of those writing assignments. And they're like, write your dream job. And I said, to be a guitar player. And my teacher, who's just like a language arts teacher, was like, that's not a real job. And
Oh
I
my
remember being
God.
as like a 13-year-old, just hopes dashed. I'm like, I'm going to prove him wrong. And, here we are. So it worked out. But yeah, kind of always, once I put a guitar in my hands, I started on a nylon string, and then
Oh, wow.
my
Okay.
parents got me an electric guitar the next year because I was begging. And then now, yeah, it never stopped.
Now, were you the typical kid that got in a band and all of that kind of stuff?
I had a high school band. It was like 3 girls and Josh on drums. And it was kind of loud and raucous, and we got 3rd place in the talent show. It was our, we were like, we're really doing it. So
That's cool.
yeah, it was really fun.
That fueled the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'd like to know, this is a big umbrella question, and I'm sure you've been asked before. What inspires you to write? Not like, I'm going to write about this or write that, but is there something that inspires you?
Sure. And I love that question because I love hearing other people's answers to it, because I'm always kind of seeking, well, what makes you do this, Usually it's the need to say something out loud, but that maybe I'm scared to speak,
Okay.
Often it's that I'm like, oh, I have deep feelings about something, but I'm going to put it in a song because that, I can work this out this way and then play it for people. But there's just so much in the world that's inspirational. I find that, knowing what you do with your art, that it's just an endless font if you're paying attention. So history and other artists. I've been really inspired by visual artists lately. I spent a year in New York and was up the street from MoMA a lot and went over there, and I'm just like, just in awe every time I walked into one of those rooms. But it made me want to write. I'm not sure how or what, but it definitely affected me. So that was really inspiring this last year. But something someone says to me in a conversation, if you hang out with songwriters, they're constantly like, hang on, I got to write that down, So you got to always be scanning the horizon, I think, just like tuning in and making sure you're paying attention. And there's plenty to write about then.
I'm glad you said that you get inspired by other mediums, if you will, because I might listen to a song and want to paint. So
Yeah.
do you think it's important for artists to step outside of their world?
I think nearly essential, because I know a lot of artist friends will get stuck in like, they don't even listen to music anymore because they're scared they'll either redo something that's been done or steal a line from someone without even knowing, or they're like, well, they already did it. I don't want to, it just kind of stops you. I get really inspired by listening to a lot of different music, but I've heard that from artist friends. I'm like, well, why not read a poem or go look at a Rothko painting, or, there's a lot of things you could do to get around that. So, and it just broadens your reach, I think.
I definitely believe so. Now, when you're writing a song, what's the typical avenue, or maybe not so typical, coming up with melodies and lyrics?
Yeah. I think I start with I have this notes app that's just full of ideas, that, those things that I grab from a conversation or the air or whatever. So if I'm like, I'm going to scroll through this and see what sticks today. And then I'm usually sitting down with a guitar. That's historically how I've done it. But actually this last year I spent learning production and songwriting at Berkeley, NYC. And we learned a lot of just how to do the production side of things. And I worked with a lot of just start with a track and write over that, which was very different for me, not the acoustic guitar approach, which is pretty broadening and very fun. And I'm hooked on that now. But it was just another way to crack that open. But usually always I'm coming at it with a lyric or a title or a topic, something like that.
So you are moving into the future with
Totally. I hope so.
like Pro Tools and these other types
Yeah.
of...
The future for me, anyway. I always spent years just looking at that stuff and being like, wow, that's so cool. I wish I could do that, but that's for somebody else. And then it was like, the world got crazy in 2020 and I was stuck at home a lot. And I'm like, I'm going to try to learn Logic Pro. And I
Oh, wow.
dabbled and got far enough, where you're Googling how to do things and watching YouTube tutorials. But the chance to apply to this program just kind of showed up in my universe. A friend had done it the year before I signed up. And I was like, well, I do want to learn production for real. So that's what got me there. And I loved every single minute in New York. It was so good.
Was it just a little bit scary because you already have a music career and then all of a sudden you're like, God, I'm going to jump into a whole different side
Totally.
of this?
Because there's so many things you can work on as like the performing songwriter indie musician but I've done a lot of gigs, I've booked a lot of shows, and that, I don't know, I was like, what else is there? And I've always been drawn to like, it's like painting with sound, doing the production stuff. And there's so many just avenues to go down that direction. And I've always been attracted to that. And I was like, let's give this a go. But I was totally terrified that I'd get to New York and go to like the first class and be like, this is way over my head, or I don't like this at all, actually. That there's always that fear, but it worked out.
Very cool. Now, do you more often than not play solo or with others?
Like, I would say as a core, I'm playing solo, and have since the beginning of my gigging career. But like lately, especially in Austin, there's so many cool musicians around and they're my buds. And like, I just played a couple of shows this last weekend, and I had my friend Noelle Hampton played synth while I played acoustic guitar, and my friend Katie sang these amazing harmonies. And just having that trio, I was like, oh, I feel this. There's power in a group. So I'm a little bit hooked on that now. Strength in numbers. I play gigs with my good friend and fellow songwriter Shawnee Kilgore a lot. We kind of have our own separate careers, but we bounce off each other well, so that like that works. It doesn't always work when you play with somebody, as I imagine happens in all the other art forms, but
the artistic difference that we hear about.
Exactly. Yeah, but when it clicks, it's pretty magical and fun. So, and it's kind of lonely playing by yourself all the time.
Yeah?
Yeah, you're just like up there with your thoughts. Yeah, if you're not tapped into the song, if you're like, well, what's that guy thinking over there? Performing is a whole other thing that I'm not sure. Might be why I've trended toward like, let's make sounds with a computer, because I can be in a room alone for that, But
Now, is it different? I would imagine, and I would think it would be a bit more scary to be just solo. It's you, your voice, and the guitar.
totally.
As opposed to, I got a band, I got a synth player, I got a horn section, I got all this stuff that's going to be distracting, but
Totally.
you're kind of naked up there when you're solo, aren't you?
Exactly. And you're like, you wrote all the words, or at least when I play, for the most part, I'm doing songs I wrote pretty much by myself. And so it's like, this is sink or swim. They're going to dig it or not. And if they don't, what happens? It's a lot. It's like riding a wave. I don't surf, but I imagine it is. You're like, oh no, here we go.
Now, I would imagine there may have been a time when you've played and you got crickets.
Yeah.
That's gotta hurt. And how do you recover from the crickets?
That's a great question. Yeah, there's a few gigs around town here where they pay okay, but you're definitely kind of wallpaper.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just strive to get like one person to pay attention while you're playing a song, and then hopefully like clap or like give you a nod, when you're done. But sometimes that doesn't happen. So exactly to your question, like there's some sort of inner fortitude that hopefully has to come out, or you just start crying. But
Oh,
you're
no.
like, sometimes I just tell myself, you know what, you're playing these songs one more time and that's really good practice. It's fascinating what your brain spins through.
That's a good way to look at it. It's like, I'm just practicing.
Totally.
And that's fine.
In front of people, and that's even
In front
better.
of people.
It's better than practicing at home. So
Now you write, like you said, most of the lyrics are yours and most of the music. When is a song finished?
oh, that's a great one. You know, speaking to the performing part of it, when I was in Austin, full time playing gigs, I would kind of take a new song out and play it for a crowd. And if there were, you can feel when a line, even if the audience doesn't know, like they're not judging every single line, but you know when you sing it out loud at people that you're like, oh, that's not the right word. Like you're kind of gauging it. It's interesting because you do not quite know in your bedroom until you play it in front of a crowd. And that was interesting for me in New York because the program was intensive and I did not book any gigs while I was doing it. So I didn't have that audience reception. I did have class time where all my classmates were like, we were all nitpicking each other, but it's different when you're on a stage playing. So I often find I can tell it's done when I play it all the way through and I'm like, you know, I feel solid about it, or I didn't drop any words, because that happens too. If it's not quite done and the words don't quite fit, I'll like stumble, even though I know I wrote it. It's a fascinating little process, I think.
Wow.
It's like your subconscious is working on it in the background and being like, nope, not quite. But you got to get it out there and try it.
So you allow some improv on your own self.
Totally.
While it's happening.
Absolutely. I think that's a core part of it, and just and being open to that and not like thinking it's shameful or like you should have had that done better. Like that's not it. It's part of the game, you know.
Well, what do you how do you handle, let's say, criticism or feedback? Because of course you play your music somewhere, somebody writes an article or says that Jana played here or there, or somebody's job is to write about it.
Right.
Of course we know how we handle the good stuff. Have you ever had to handle, let's say, an unfavorable review? Or one that you just didn't like so much?
Yeah, there's been, I think I feel like my process is growing as an artist. I don't know if this is true, but I feel like some come out more fully formed in their 20s. Like, I don't know what happens. They're just like, bam, this 25-year-old phenom writes great songs, performs great. I don't know how that happens. More power to them. I'm like a slow grow kind of one. Like, I've been studying for years, working on it, and I feel like more than ever, I'm comfortable with it now, but it's taken a while. So people that saw me play when I was 25, like, you know, in the last 10, 15 years, I'm like, I'm different now. But I think sometimes that like, you know, it's even just a passing comment of like, you've got potential or something like that, where they mean well, but you're also like, what does that mean, you know, for me right now? And it's hard to shake off. But, you know, I think the trick is to, you know, go back the next day and work on it again. Keep every day a little something so you get better. I don't know. That's it. That's a rough one. And then a year at Berkeley where we took in our stuff every day and had it, you know, dissected and discussed in a classroom setting. At first I was terrified, and then we all got used to it because we all became this little like family in our cohort. We all cared about each other's songs. So, and our artistic success. So it wasn't like he's going to come at me because, you know, he has a vendetta. That's not it. That was a good kind of criticism, and doing that every day, I hope maybe built up my inner fortitude to take the outside stuff better. We'll see. I'm putting a record out next year, so someone might review it.
Awesome. So it sounded like this criticism in class that started out as kind of scary. Did it get to the point where you couldn't wait to take a song in class just to hear what can somebody help me with or say something about? Exactly.
And that was, you know, you're like, I hope that they have thoughts about this versus, you know, versus sounds great, Jana, good job. Like you kind of don't want that because you're like, no, there's something here we can make better and tweak. And then also it was important for me to learn what criticism to not take. You know, I think I used to be a person that was just like, oh, they said I need to change that verse and that verse isn't right. Versus now I can be like, actually, that verse is what I wanted to write. So I'm going to keep it. Thank you for the input.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was a big deal for me. It's like, okay.
So confidence, it sounds like it takes some work
Truly, it must.
in this biz.
Yeah. And knowing the line between confidence and ego, I think is interesting, because some people don't want to hear anything, but maybe the feedback is good. So, but trusting yourself to know, oh, they were right. That's a bad line, or just a line that needs more attention, versus that's how I would say it. And that makes me unique as an artist. So I'm going to keep saying it like that. I don't know. Something like that.
And speaking of confidence, I'd like to address something that I'm not trying to cause a division of the sexes, but let's just talk about, if you were to say guitar hero, what do people think of?
They think of a dude.
A dude.
Yeah.
With a guitar.
Totally. Dressed in black, shredding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always. It doesn't even go anywhere else. And there you are. You jump into that world. Is it difficult? Or every world has its challenges. Is that a part of the challenge? Or have you just not even paid attention to that, gone for it? Or does it show up once in a while?
I've thought about that a lot. I think it does show up. I would prefer it not to, but I think it just does. And you see it even in this, you know, Austin has a great music scene and a lot of festivals, and you look at the lineups and you see that there's a clear ratio of, like, you know, it's getting better actually in the last few years, but you could always see, we called it the token girl act. Like there's like man, and then a girl. And I think even just with guitar players, it's even, I think that is a mountain we're still climbing in terms of just recognizing the different skill sets of guitar players. There are the Van Halen shredders. I respect that. It's not my thing. But there's like Sean Colvin, who lives in Austin, but is just a world-renowned songwriter. But her guitar playing is just perfect and soulful and rhythmic and amazing. And that's a different kind of mastery that she has than someone playing electric guitar, but it's there. So yeah. And I think it starts with, like, I teach guitar to women, and I think that's core, is just starting to, like, hand more girls a guitar, you know? Yeah.
And they get pretty jazzed once they get a hold of one of these things.
I think so. I think about me when I was 11. I was like, I could do anything on this thing, you know? I could play any song. What? That's insane.
So playing songs, studio versus live. What's the challenges of both, and what's the joys of both?
Yeah. I love a gig because it's a little bit different nowadays, because people film you on their cell phones and then it goes up on the internet. But in general, I feel like a gig is a moment in time that we're sharing, and it goes off into the ether. And oftentimes I've tried to learn not to hyper focus on mistakes, because everyone makes them at every gig. But if you think about them too much, it ruins the show for you. And if you're like, that was like a unique moment in that show where I forgot when the next verse starts, or I went to the F sharp minor instead of the A. It doesn't matter though, because everyone's having a experience in the space. Versus, you know, the studio, you can get so wrapped up in, like, nail this part, play it again. And I think I've been lucky with mentors that kind of approach studio time with, like, a relaxed ease. And so I kind of learned it that way. And it's like, you know, you can play it 8 times, or you probably had it in the first 3. Like, let's go back and listen, and that one will work, you know? And even now, like, the way I produce songs, I love layers and manipulating and, like, using all kinds of, like, tricks with samples and reversing and reverb and all that kind of stuff. So you can cover up a multitude of things that way. So I think that's part of the art, but I love both, but I'm really nerding out on the recording part of it.
I bet that's a lot of fun.
So much fun.
I bet you could stay in there for quite a long time.
Totally. And like you said, when is the song done? That's the other
When's that
hard
done?
part. That's also the question with that. But
have you ever, let's call it oversaturated a piece and had to go in and take some stuff out?
yeah. I think that's actually just a normal part of my process now. Like I'll just lay down a bunch of stuff and then I call it the carve away time. And it's actually fun for me because you learn not to get too attached to anything. And then like, well, what if, and the glory of software is you can mute it and it's still there if you miss it, I know in the olden days it was harder to delete and redo, but now possibilities are endless. So I always tell myself, take stuff away. And if you're unsure, take some more away.
Very cool. Do you currently challenge your current musical abilities, your actual prowess as a guitar player and a singer? Do you challenge that and push that?
I do. I was just telling my friend Shawnee this morning, I was like, 2024 is my guitar woodshed year. Like, because I kind of, I played guitar in New York, but I wasn't working on it. I was focusing on learning Logic Pro and Ableton and like all those things. And my brain can only woodshed so much. So, but I missed it. And there's always a frontier with an instrument that I love. And I'm sure that's in painting too, or any art form, but you can feel solid in what you've got. And you can also be like, there's the very next step. And I can get there if I work on it.
And can you see that sometimes? You're like, man, I want to be there and I know I can get there.
Yep.
I got to find some time.
Totally. Absolutely. And like, I just got to play with a great musician. He's a wonderful songwriter and guitarist, Michael O'Connor. He's kind of one of my founding guitar heroes too. And he's from Texas, which is great. And he's so generous. We played a song swap. So we just played back and forth and he'd lean over and be like, this is an E, take one. And like, him having confidence in me was almost like enough of a thing to boost me over the doubt ledge. And I was like, okay, Michael said I could do it. So I played a solo. It sounded good. I'm like, okay. Like, and that's just enough incremental exposure to the next step. And like the challenge is, how do I put a Michael O'Connor on my shoulder at home when I'm practicing? But I can also call him. But it's good to have people like that around.
So have you paid a moment like that forward with a musician?
Ooh.
Someone who's maybe younger than you, newer player, and you set them at ease a little bit?
I hope so. I try to, I just know how much people's encouragement means to me. So I try to spread that around to the people I believe in. I met some fantastic writers and artists at Berkeley, and they're out doing things in New York and California and stuff. And I hope, I'm not offering them any opportunities, but I try to encourage them from afar. But here, one of my most fun Austin things that I've done is teach it girl guitar, which the name's a little misleading because it's for women who are 21 and over because they can take classes and drink wine. But it's a good hang. But also it's just for people that want to, like, anywhere from learn songs to play for their family or around a campfire to I want to be on stage gigging. And I've taught there for years, and it's fun to see how, just sharing how cool playing guitar is, or writing songs, or weird musical theory. I love teaching that too. Can take people. So I hope that's paying it forward.
Were you one of the founding members of Girl Guitar?
I was an early on teacher. Mandy Rowden is the founder and, OG, awesome head of it all and still runs it. And she's just, she kind of started it with a dream and a low bank account. And that was, I think they just had their 15th anniversary. I don't want to misspeak. 10 or 15, but they've been around a while. And she has probably kickstarted hundreds of people into playing music, which is incredible. So I'm happy to be a part of it. But yeah, she's great.
I think most people who listen to music assume that artists purge their own emotions through songs. Like, people would assume a songwriter feels sad, They're going to write a sad song. They feel
Right.
happy. They're going to write a happy song. Does that work? Is that how it happens?
I love that. Cause you know what? I'm a Taylor Swift fan who is notoriously a confessional songwriter, and people spend a lot of time charting like, we think she wrote this about this person, and then I think sometimes I get caught up in that. I'm like, I wonder who she's writing about there. But then when I tell people how I write, like it might be a spark of like, like I said earlier, something I want to say out loud, but I'm scared. But I call myself like a jigsaw writer because I'm like taking, something a friend said and something from this cool movie I watched and like piecing these emotions together into what I hope is a cohesive like feeling that rides along and makes sense when the listener receives it. But it's not like word for word the event that I went through to write that song. It's I get a little esoteric with it, and maybe it's a way to guard, but I also think it's more fun that way.
Well, can you tell us a song that you wrote that's very, very dear to you and why?
Ooh. The one that popped to mind, so I'll say it. It's called American Habits, and I wrote it in New York. And
So recently.
very recently, yeah, last fall, and it's going to be on the next EP that'll be out
Yay.
in 2024. But and weirdly, I don't do this often, but it is a whole song about the life of Ernest Hemingway, who's a writer that I have admired for a long time for all of his faults, which the song is about all of his faults because he had a very tragic life, very, frustrating kind of human being. But I love his economy of words and how he puts things together. So I've always had a soft spot for Hemingway, but such a sad, he destroyed a lot of relationships along the way, and he moved around a lot. He went to Paris in the Lost Generation years when all the writers were hanging out over there. But then he came to Florida because he wanted to live in Key West. But then he went to Spain for the bullfights. And he was always like running from something. And then he ended up in Idaho, and he just, all of the pain, he could not outrun it. And he killed himself. And I just thought, what an end to that kind of life. And I tried to sum it up in a song, which is a hefty task, and I don't know what Ernest would say, but I'm very proud of it because I also think it speaks to kind of this just American culture that we have, where we have a lot of bravado, but we also like to run away from things, and then we like to, we have this homecoming kind of thing, but sometimes we just give up. I don't know. It's a very American story in that guy's life, so I'm really proud of that, how that came out.
So you do enjoy being a storyteller.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said earlier, some of those like just digging into someone's life, you can mine for all kinds of inspiration. So why not do that?
Let's talk about music, a big picture of music. I want to know what you think. Whenever I go to a movie, I love soundtracks. I love them. Mm-hmm. And I always watch a little bit of the movie while it's playing and wondering, what would this movie be like if there was no soundtrack?
Oh, man.
And I'm thinking it would be pretty diminished. What do you think about that? Why is that? And is that in life?
Yeah, I've thought about that too. I think somewhere at the core of human existence, music is like a driving like heartbeat underneath it all. And so, yeah, if you took it all out of a movie or a TV show, it would be noticeable. And it wouldn't, I think a lot of the emotional highs and lows, not to diminish the actor's work, but would be a little lessened without the musical score underneath, like kind of guiding people. And I think it's a lot of subconscious, maybe we definitely don't understand how all of it works, but whatever happens with brain waves and frequencies and all that kind of stuff, but it attaches to the heartstrings, and that stuff's so cool. And I don't understand all of it, but it's fun to dive into it. So, yeah.
Have you ever went out for dinner or had a meal that was just so delicious. And while you're eating it, you can taste maybe the onion or the garlic, but there's a couple of flavors in there and you just can't pick out. But boy, it's good and it's driving you crazy that you can't pick out the flavor.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening with your music. I'm listening to it and I'm like, this is really delicious. I hear the guitar and I hear the drum, but there's this flavor in there. What do you use? What's your special sauce? What is it?
I love that. Man, what is the special sauce? I think it's hopeful intentions for like the right thing in the right place. I'm self-producing my latest record because that's what I learned at Berklee, but I've worked with a producer here in Austin named Daniel Barrett for all of my other projects, and he's so good at, thinking about the heart and the mind versus, we got to make this a hit. He's never said that, and that's why I was drawn to working with Dan, I think, for many reasons. But the secret sauce is just, writing songs you love and recording them with people you love, and being very intentional about, do we need this part? Maybe not. And goes back to the carving away process. But I think that love and intention together is maybe the secret sauce, I hope. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what it tasted like.
Love and intention.
Are there life lessons that being a musician has taught you that don't necessarily have anything to do with music?
I'm sure a billion. I think, something my advisor at Berklee pointed out to me that I didn't think was a strong suit until she said it was, but she said, you're just methodical. Like, you get your music done because you wake up every day and work on it, whether it's a little bit or spend the whole day, but every day, methodical change in the process. And I think that has applied to everything. It's like doing your taxes or planning a road trip. If I just do that little bit at a time, which has got me so far in music and seeing how things piece together, like you can get pretty far with whatever you're trying to do. I think that applies.
Let's talk about upcoming projects. You kind of touched on you're going to release some music in 2024.
Yeah, that self-produced record that I made, a lot of it in a bedroom in Brooklyn. It's amazing what you can do with a microphone and some software. And then I had some other folks play on it too. But my goal for 2024 and onward, I hope, is to work on more projects producing other people. I think that is the next logical step, and something I really love to do is because I've had good studio experiences. I've had a lot of friends talk about poor ones with just, the producer had all these opinions and wouldn't listen to me, or, they come out with a record that they're not proud of because it doesn't sound like them. Mm-hmm. And that is the thing I would really love to work with people to pull, who are you, and let's put this on this record and make sure you're with it every step of the way, but make cool sounds, because that's what I love to do. So that's kind of the producer's job, is to it's half therapy for the artist, but also bringing the vision to life, but making sure it's their vision and not yours. You gotta step back a little bit. But hopefully, I have a few people that are sending me songs to work on, and I'd love to get in the studio with more people. And I think that seems like a logical way forward after this past year.
Well, we're looking forward to it because I'm playing the album you gave me to death, so I need some more Jana music.
Gonna send you the new one ahead of time.
So for our listeners and viewers, where can we find you online and listen to your music, buy your music, all of that stuff?
All that stuff. I'm at janapochop.com. Just will send you everywhere. But Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp is great for artists. You can purchase downloads and physical media there, and they actually pay the artist money, so that's nice.
That's novel these days.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, all those things. And it's just, it's great to follow people you like on all the socials. It helps all that marketing stuff, but the necessary evils.
Awesome.
Fun.
Well, Jana, thanks for taking time out of your day.
Thank you,
It's
Zulu.
such a pleasure, and now I'm just waiting with bated breath for this new album.
I'm so excited to share it with you and anyone who wants to listen, and I'm so appreciative that you had me on today. Thank you.
Right on. And if you enjoyed today's episode with Jana Pochop, please check out some of our other episodes. Until next time, be well.